welcome to the Gay Liberation Network here on Chicago Access Network TV. I'm your host, Andy Thayer, with the Gay Liberation Network, and with us tonight is Alexis Martinez of the Dyke March Chicago.
Thank you.
And Alexis is a longtime activist and grandmother, and I've been seeing you at community events for years and years, and it's so great that you're part of the organizing team. Tell us, Alexis, what is Chicago's Dyke March all about? What is it? And tell our folks what it is.
Well, the Dyke March is essentially a grassroots mobilization and celebration. We march, to show our resiliency, to show our, intersectionality between, trans, genderqueer, intersex. We try to be as inclusive as possible. Of different orientations that generally are oppressed.
And so we're talking about genderqueer folk, we're talking about bisexual folk, we're talking about trans folk.
Right.
This is truly inclusive of people within the LGBT community.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely.
But the Dyke March talks about more than just LGBT specific issues.
Oh, we do. One of the things is that we not only look at the oppressions that are here in this country, but we are trying to get to the point where we can link up with with movements across the world. We're working on putting together some positions like for our support of Palestine. Which again, personally, I'm very pro-Palestinian. And most of the people in the Corps that we haven't gotten a position paper on it down, but we intend on doing this. We're also for immigrant rights. We're very, that's one of the main reasons we're going down to Little Village this year.
Well, in Chicago, I understand, has got the largest Palestinian community in the United States outside of the Detroit area. There's tons of Palestinian folks who live in this community who are directly in the crosshairs of the so-called Muslim ban and the demonization of Palestinians. So that's really important that there is a shall we say, Palestinian-specific venue to bring up Palestinian issues. That's very admirable.
Well, my mom was a White Mountain Apache, and an awful lot of times when I talk about supporting the Palestinians, I parallel it to what happened to the Apaches.
That's
It's
right.
continuing to happen to the Apaches.
Yeah.
Is that they fight for their land and they're called the terrorists. And they're going up against like impossible military power. The odds are, yet they keep fighting. And so to me, it's important that we connect those histories. There's a lot of examples, that can show us how the things that are playing out in Palestine, have a long, connection to history. It's not just
the water protectors in this country. It's about indigenous people's rights and Palestinians. Those who know some of the stories about what's going on the West Bank and Gaza Strip, it's the settlers, the Israeli settlers take lots and lots of the water. I think it's something like a 5-to-1 ratio per person.
It's every possible thing, education, medical care, housing, everything.
Yeah. So this is a call-in show here, and if you want to get in on the conversation, we encourage you to call that number at the bottom of your screen, 312-738-1060. We'll try and get you on the air here with Alexis Martinez of the Chicago Dyke March. If you are calling in, we are talking about the Dyke March, and so sort of, that's the subject we're aiming for.
Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
Just fine. How are you today?
Always. Good show as always. But
Thank you.
the thing is, I saw on TV today where there's this city down south of gay people that won't let another group of gay people to march in a parade. And the reason they gave is that they voted for Trump.
Because they voted for Trump?
Yes, yes, and now they won't let them march. I mean, what's good for everybody? I mean, what's going on here?
Well, I mean, clearly, you may view that as an oppressive action, but I mean, Trump supports a racist, misogynist, a xenophobic agenda, and his supporters are not my friends. Okay, at least in a political sense, they're actually my enemies. Okay, and I'm not going to welcome my enemies, to have my back.
And while we're talking about parades and so forth, I would like to get an announcement up here about this year's Dyke March here. Alexis, tell people what's going on with this year's march.
Okay, this year we're in Little Village, or La Villeta, and we're going to have it at Petowski Park, which is at 32nd and Keeler. It's the south end of Petowski Park on the Keeler side. We're going to have, entertainment, we're going to have food, we're going to have, tabling, the usual Dyke March. The exact spot of the
march
start
route?
Yeah. I didn't look at the map today, so I'm embarrassed that I don't know the exact start-off point.
But it's starting at Piotrowski Park?
No, it's ending at Piotrowski Park.
Oh, it's ending at Piotrowski Park. Okay, well then, the good thing is that you can contact the Dyke March at this. You could just follow their website, which is coming up in your screen here, chicagodykemarch.wordpress.com.
Also, you can look at Facebook.
And while we're on announcements, I'd also like to announce that the next day in the Gay Pride March, the Gay Liberation Network is hosting a solidarity contingent focusing on Trump's attacks on not just LGBTs, but blacks, immigrants, workers, Muslims, Palestinians, any number of groups that have been targeted by his administration and frankly previous administrations as well. This is a scene from our previous Pride Parade contingent last year. Again, it's a very intersectional or solidarity approach that we're trying to take and bringing our message to the over 1 million people who come to the Pride Parade. So check that out. Again, 11 a.m. Sunday, June 25th. We'll be meeting in front of the Target in Uptown, 4466 North Broadway in the Uptown neighborhood. But Alexis, this year the Dyke March is in Little Village, and my understanding, having participated in the Dyke March several times, is that each year the Dyke March organizers choose a different neighborhood to go to. Explain some of the reasoning behind that, please.
Okay. We started Dyke March in Chicago. Dyke March started in 1996, and at that time it was one day before
the Pride Parade. Yeah.
Pride Parade, and it was started by the Lesbian Avengers, who started in New York and Washington D.C. and everything. And the following year, it moved to Andersonville, which was heavily populated by the lesbian community, and it stayed there for 10 years. And then in 2007, there was a lot of new people that wanted to get it out of a white neighborhood,
right.
And began to include other neighborhoods, and it changed leadership. It moved to Pilsen for 2 years, then it moved to South Shore for 2 years, Argyle for 2 years, and we were in Humboldt Park for 3 years, and now we're in Little Village. And the reason we do this is simply that we want to make it understood that it isn't just white communities that where queer people exist.
Chicago is majority minority.
Yeah, it's majority minority, and I'm saying is that we need to move where the people are, as opposed to the people come to us. We still have a lot of white support, and so we try to be very careful not to come in as a colonial force.
Right. Well, part of it is also because we are in a majority minority city. I think it is important to really reach out to not just the quote unquote gay or lesbian ghettos, so to speak, where frankly most of us can't afford to live, and make other neighborhoods, make every neighborhood queer friendly. And I think that's been a very admirable mission of the Dyke March, and it's because the organizers such as yourself aren't coming in as a colonial group, but you are raising issues of intersectionality. I can remember when the march in Pilsen in particular talked a great deal about gentrification, talked about deportation of undocumented folks, and there's obviously a lot of people who share multiple identities.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's very admirable. I mean, talk about, this year it's in Little Village. What are some of the issues that you're trying to raise?
There's two big things happening, and it's not just Little Village, it's Pilsen, and it's other neighborhoods, but I mean, those, we're focusing on those neighborhoods this time, is that there's a big move, like real estate interests, are really like gobbling up the neighborhoods, what used to be affordable housing is all of a sudden, rising dramatically, and it's not just a loop. I mean, that's a whole different story. But when you have, people coming in on 26th Street or 18th Street and displacing people, it becomes a huge problem in a lot of ways, because you're breaking up long-established communities.
Well, according to the statistics, some nearly 50% of Chicagoans are so-called housing challenged or rent challenged, in that we spend 30% or more of our income on housing.
Yeah.
And anyone who lives in the city knows, you look around you, where's the new construction going? It's all luxury housing. It's studios renting for $1,500 and absurd things like this. Most of us pay for 2- and 3-bedroom apartments or more.
And the effect of that is that the people that used to, live adjacent to those buildings that are being built or nearby, they end up moving into Pilsen. They end up moving into 26th Street, and those rents go up then.
Well, and we've seen the wholesale destruction of public housing as well as SROs, and that puts market pressure on the housing. That it means that a lot of people are trying to get affordable housing, but their stock isn't there, so the prices on even what used to be affordable housing goes
this
up.
isn't just happening in Chicago.
That's
I
right.
mean, I've been in Brooklyn, and I was in Brooklyn when I was 16 years old, and I just see the neighborhoods just block after block after block, just being, and you see the signs, the resale shops that are renamed Vintage,
Right, right.
and the fancy strollers,
Yeah.
I've seen it in San Francisco, I've seen it in Seattle, when I do get to travel, I see these things, and it's a thing where I think the people that fled to the suburbs, a generation ago, their children and their grandchildren are coming back to the cities, and they're building the cities for that. I mean, the core of all of these cities is dramatically, when we keep talking about population loss, but
What's the new housing stock being built? I mean, can anyone name affordable housing developments that are going in any neighborhood, unless it's, I mean, there's one that's going in on the northwest side that we've helped to play a bit role in helping, but it's been a real political battle because the gentrifiers, don't want it, and the racists don't want it, and
I mean, I grew up in the Harold Ickes, that's next to Chinatown.
Right.
And the development they're going to put in there started out with like 40% what they called affordable housing. It's down to 17 or 18% now. And they're going to start building it in August. There's a stripping out of poor people. middle-class people even, you have to be, they're moving in a lot of corporations into the city, and this has an effect on everything. You know, people who are undocumented, you know, it has an effect on the schools, which schools get built, which don't get built, you know.
Well, it has a particular effect on the LGBT community. I've heard statistics as high as 40% of homeless youth identify as LGBT. And when we've got a community where the ability to come out, the ability to assert your own identity is often only possible when you're out underneath your parents' thumbs, and yet so many 20-somethings are forced with their parents past age 21, that leads to homelessness. So homelessness is in particular an LGBTQ issue that a lot of the big NGOs, the non-governmental organizations, what I term Gay Inc., don't even bring up. So I'm so happy that Dyke March is highlighting that.
You know, to be in movement, I think you have to have this, just a heart for, you know, solidarity across movements.
Yes.
It can't just be about, you know, what I identify as or, you know, what you identify as. It's got to be, okay, you know, you're a gay white male, you know, I'm a Mexican Apache trans woman. And, you know, where do we work together to get to the same place? You know,
well, especially when gay white males are frankly a minority within the LGBT community.
You know,
I mean,
especially
women and people of color and, yeah.
Well, we're a microcosm of a larger society. You know, I mean, white males run the country, basically.
Yes.
You know, and you know, whether they're left or right, you know, or in the middle, they still run the country. They're in the legislatures and the courts and everything. You know, I'm for prison abolition, for example. You know, I mean, maybe the hardest core criminals, you know, but for people who smoke pot or, you know, somebody that gets into a fight or something, you know, we put them in the prisons and they come out even worse.
Well, you notice how they only start talking about decriminalization and alternatives to prison sentences once white people are in an opiate epidemic.
Yeah, right. But that's the story of America. This is nothing new.
Yeah.
You know,
but the Dyke March is about trying to change that.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of people say, well, you know, that you have to do much, much more. No, change happens, you know, like raindrops. You know, you get enough raindrops, you got a stream and then a river and then it flows into the ocean. You know, we're trying to build awareness. You know, and then maybe. And I've heard people tell me, you know, I mean, they'll walk over, I'm so glad that you guys did this because, you know, until I came over here, you know, and they'll come from, you know, like 80 miles or 100 miles away, you know, and it's and this day I can be who I am. Yeah. You know, and again, I've seen the changes. I mean, 10 years ago, there was no way Dyke March would have let me be in the Corps. You know.
Well, that's a huge improvement.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying, but it's incremental. It's always, you know, I mean, unfortunately, change doesn't happen in spasms. Sometimes it does, but then...
Yeah, most of the time it doesn't, but there's sometimes, fortunately, like the 60s and whatever it does. But Alexis, I want to move on to another core issue that we were talking about with this year's Dyke March was support for the undocumented and against the attacks on immigrants. We were discussing before the show, there's a ton of LGBTQ folk who who are also undocumented, for example, and their risk of being deported to a country that they barely even know or don't know at all because they came here when in their youth or what have you.
They came here in their youth, or you know, especially for trans women, Latinas, they get caught up in this thing where even if they crossed yesterday, if they get shipped back, they're more than likely to get themselves, you know, murdered or imprisoned. You know, there's a lot of trans women that get murdered in Mexico, for example, or if you can ship them back to South American countries, you know, or you know, I even know a couple of Russian trans girls, right? That got shipped back. You know, and I talk with them, you know, and it's like, we have to find a way to get back again, you know,
Yeah.
because they're under a tremendous amount of oppression. So to me, it's important that we build on solidarity.
Yeah,
You know, and it's difficult.
We don't have a lot of
Yeah,
time left
yeah.
in the show, but I'd just like to note, if you want to get in on the conversation, please call that number at the bottom of your screen, 312-738-1060, to talk with Alexis Martinez about this year's Dyke March. It is on the last Saturday in June. In a few moments, we'll be getting up the specific information about how you can get involved in that. Alexis, so we're in the Little Village neighborhood this year. That's also the neighborhood where we've got the largest jail complex in the Western Hemisphere at Cook County Jail, which, yes, I've had some pleasure of being there on the inside, but fortunately not for terribly long. And we have got a rampant imprisonment, particularly of people of color in this country, that with this Attorney General Sessions shows no signs of stopping. It wasn't like it was a picnic under the Obama administration for people of color, with police departments murdering people left and right. Are you going to be bringing up the issue of prison abolition, or at least dialing back the criminal justice system from its really heightened level right now?
Again, on the stage, there's only so much that we can present, you know. We're going through the process right now of deciding what our focus is. And, you know, right now there's, a part of it comes from me too. You know, I really want us to take a position on Palestine.
Yes.
Because I really want us to take a position on gentrification. And this is not, I shouldn't say me, we're a collective, and we
Yeah.
arrive at everything through consensus. But we want to start taking strong positions, you know, and sometimes people aren't going to be happy with them.
Yeah,
You know?
well, if you're not saying something that pisses off at least some people, then you're probably not saying anything at all, right?
Amen.
So, again, I wanted to show people how they can get involved in the Dyke March here. Alexis, talk us through what's going on with this year's Dyke March. Oops, I did that wrong. Here we go. Here we go.
Well, like I said, it's in Little Village, the last Saturday of June. That's the 24th. It's again. I have to apologize because I don't know where the march is going to take off.
Google Map.
Yeah.
You'll find it.
And it's going to be in a Little Village neighborhood, or La Villita. You know, and we'll be at Petoskey Park. You know, you can get all the information at chicagodikemarch.wordpress.com or Facebook Chicago Dyke March. You know, and there's if you want to donate anything, there's a PayPal.
Yeah, we can't talk about making donations, unfortunately, on the show here.
Oh, I apologize.
That's okay. It's the nonprofit status of CAN TV. But the next day, we're also having a big solidarity contingent in the Gay Pride Parade that's going to be starting in the Uptown neighborhood, and that's how you can meet us there. You can also email us at lgbtliberation@aol.com for more information about that. A few quick pictures of last year's contingent in the Gay Pride March. Over 1 million people come out and watch the parade. So if you've got a political message, such as we've had every year in the march, whether supporting Chelsea Manning, supporting anti-war issues, and what have you, it's a great place to send that message, and we invite people to, again, check out our contingent in the Pride Parade the day after the Dyke March. Alexis, we've got just a couple minutes left. What do you think is the main thing that folks in the audience need to hear about the Dyke March? Why the Dyke March is important?
It's important because, at least for that one day, you're out there, you know, being who you are, you know, being loud, being proud, letting people know, you know, what we're about. You know, it's an opportunity to build community, you know, and I think it's really important that things like Dyke March continue. You know, we don't have any corporate sponsorship. We don't, you You know, you're not gonna see no Miller Lite, you know, like, whatever. You know.
Yeah. Well, it's a truly community thing. It's totally volunteer, and it's what the gay pride parades started out as, and in my opinion, should go back to, because it's that kind of grassroots activism that has won us every single right we've ever had. And Coca-Cola and Budweiser aren't going to do it for you. It really, it's the people that are going to defend our rights. So thank you very much, Alexis.
Oh, thank you, Andy.
You're doing a great job there, you and the other collective members. Again, it's the last Saturday in June. Check out the WordPress site there, and on Facebook, you can just do a Facebook search and find the Dyke March Chicago very easily. Thank you, everyone, for watching tonight, and again to our guest, Alexis Martinez of Dyke March Chicago Collective. Thanks so much for being here tonight, and we'll just close this out here.